everyone. This is Roy Bjellquist, and I want to welcome you today to Remembering Science Fiction Television Shows of the 1960s and the 1970s. Tonight's episode number 1, shall be our discussion of One Step Beyond. And joining me tonight for the very first time is my co-host and a man who needs very little introduction, Captain Phil Merkel of Captain Phil's Planet from WUSB Stony Brook. Hi, Phil. How are you tonight?
Hey, Roy. Here we are.
Here we are. We're doing this, Phil. Thank you so much for being with me and being my first co-host on this first edition of this show. I just want to say that I'm very happy to be able to do this, especially at this time when everything is going on in the world. And I just thought it was an opportunity to be creative and to just kind of forget about things for at least, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes or an hour, something that would be a good distraction for all of us since so much is going on. And I just want to just say hello to all my friends and family out there, and just please keep safe. It's just so important, that this be taken seriously because of everything that's taking place and that's going on. And it's just really hard to believe that we are where we are at right now at this time, with everything. So just everybody stay out there. Please be safe. And thank you for joining. It's very much appreciated. So how you doing, Phil?
As if we've taken one step beyond, Roy.
It really is. It's kind of crazy. But it's just kind of the world is just a different place right now. And I just thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of reflect on something that I really love. I know that you really love, science fiction from the 1960s, 1970s. It's kind of an era that it seems so far away and seems so long ago, but it was kind of a fun time if you really think about it, with everything that was going on.
Yes. Roy, I was just checking our levels on the other machine, so I missed a quarter of what you said. So bring me back in.
That's okay, Phil. I apologize. No worries. I was just saying that, the 1960s and 1970s, in retrospect, seem so long ago, but it's just that we grew up with this stuff. I mean, when you would be able to, see, these TV shows and everything and experience them. And then, a lot of them were saved through syndication and then a lot of them kind of like faded away just because of, for whatever reason. But I felt that this was a good opportunity to break away, pardon the pun, and, just relax for an hour.
Yeah, I think, talking about, these things, this is, I was born in 1962, and, at some point, I became a fan of fantastic television, and it took me a long time to actually discover One Step Beyond. Of course, everyone knows about the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits, and of course, the Irwin Allen shows of the 60s, the juggernaut of the 60s, Star Trek, and the superhero shows. But this little show was kind of like in the background, and it was a little niche show in the spirit of Twilight Zone, but I think it has more to do with the era of classic television. It plays more like theater production than it actually does Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, which is full-fledged science fictional endeavors. But here, it was more like closer to a radio play in a lot of ways.
No,
a few exceptions that we discussed, Roy.
Oh, I would definitely agree with you too about that, Phil, because it's funny because although this is science fiction television shows of the 1960s and 1970s, One Step Beyond actually broadcast when it started out back in January of 1959, and it went for 3 seasons. And it actually was right before the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone, and I believe premiered in October '59. So it was just, later on that year. There were similarities, but a lot of differences. And I would have to agree with you. It almost holds up as like a theater type of production in that sense.
In a lot of ways, it could have been really terrific fodder for Mystery Science Theater 3000, you know, and especially because it's the same host. It's John Newland every time, and John is kind of a dapper, well-dressed insurance salesman, you know, who's standing there, and he introduces each episode with great effect and great confidence.
Yeah.
Whereas the charm of the Twilight Zone is Rod Serling is chain-smoking cigarettes because he's terrified to go on camera, and he's so has such stage fright, which makes the Twilight Zone work so well. And you see Rod gritting his teeth. Meanwhile, you see John here, and John is like gliding seamlessly back and forth as if he's the full of rush salesman walking up and down your street.
John was he was very confident in front of being in front of the camera. In fact, reading up about him and his history, he actually started out as an actor. And then what happened was he got involved with doing the show. And as you indicated, he directed the episodes. In fact, from my research, we discussed this too, Phil, he directed most, actually, if not most, all of the episodes for this series, as well as being the host. So his involvement was very strong, and it was an integral part of it. But he came across very confident, and in the way he presented himself, it was like a dapper individual.
I find it takes away from the story a little bit, because it just gives me it really cements it in my mind that this is a production. This is not real. This is a production. And yet John spends the entire series saying these psychic things that have happened really happened, and this is real, and this is really going on. And I'm sitting there watching this saying, like, hell, this really happened.
Well, the different stories, it lasted for 3 seasons. I believe it was about 94 episodes in the whole 3 seasons. And supposedly the different stories that took place were actually based upon true life events. But I think, for the most part, these stories were altered on, for some aspects of it. But when they were actually televising this series, the network, which I believe was ABC at the time, which is still ABC, had actually received letters, and people would write in and say, these type of occurrences actually had occurred, with them or something similar. So there was a lot of relation to the public in regards to it, because it dealt with psychic phenomena, it dealt with extrasensory perception, it dealt with some spirituality. So there were different facets of the stories, but it was kind of dabbling in the supernatural, so to speak. So I think that was the tone that they were going for. And then, of course, there was that ominous music that always played at, key points in the story. So especially like right at the end when something happened and it built to the climax, you knew that, it was like, kind of chime, kind of like, something's going on. It is that one step beyond.
You can watch the series on YouTube, and there's also a Roku channel. If you have a Roku device or a Roku TV, you can find it. The Roku, the episodes that are on Roku are arranged in a very haphazard manner. You can't really watch them in any sort of order, except you can see the first episode first. But on YouTube, I watched one of the episodes that stuck out in my mind from my childhood or my young adulthood, which was 1217, I think, or 1214. It was about a plane crashing into a house and a pregnant woman there. And I read the YouTube comments, and people researched what plane it was, and did the plane really crash and all this other stuff. And I thought, okay, whatever, But the funny thing about that is a lot of times people will say, a pregnant woman, her senses will sharpen, and John actually came on and says even her sixth sense will become more acute because of the pregnancy. I don't know, that he was I didn't realize he was a gynecologist, an actor and a director, but I thought that was kind of insane. But that particular episode stands out fairly well. I think, the actress is a bit shrill in it, but it is haunting to hear that plane, and it's an old propeller-driven plane.
Yeah.
And she hears it, but it's not there, and she hears it, and it's not there, and she hears it, and it's there. And I didn't talk to you about this on the phone before, Roy, but it's kind of like the premise of the movie Donnie Darko.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I got you on that.
so there's a lot of ripples. You know, the one step beyond is like a little pebble thrown into the lake. But the ripples, I mean, there was an episode about a teenage girl who could start fires, and we were saying, sounds like Firestarter by Stephen King.
Yes.
You know, that sort of thing.
With Drew Barrymore. Right, exactly. Yeah. And you know what? If you think about it, I mean, which is really kind of crazy. I mean, this show is a 60-year-old television show. So at that time, this type of show could have had some kind of influence. I mean, who's to say if it, you know, influenced, you know, Stephen King or, you know, other writers. I mean, if you think about it, what's that old saying? They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So, I mean, with a lot of stories, I mean, there's a lot of recycling or there's a lot of concepts that kind of overlap. So, I mean, that is definitely a possibility where that came from. I mean, there's only, you know, so many stories that you can do, and it you know, could tie into that. Interesting enough. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Roy. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say it's interesting though, because this show, I was not even aware of it until probably around 1979. I had gotten a book that was called The Fantastic Television, and I believe Gary Durrani had written it. And this is pre-internet. And back then, I mean, we were looking for material. I mean, Starlog magazine was a fantastic source material, back in the day. Something that, the first one dealt with, it had Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock on the cover, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy for Star Trek, which, definitely was the way to start off the magazine. Then, you had Martin Landau and Barbara Bain with issue 2 for Space 1999. And then, everything else that was following in the 70s and, the $6 Million Man, Oscar Goldman, Jamie Summers, The Bionic Woman. But a lot of source material was not available at that time. So when a book like this came out and it had a episode guide of different, shows, I mean, it was interesting and kind of fascinating to come across, this show, but it was not really being shown on any of the syndicated networks like Channel 11 out of New York, WPIX, or or Channel 9. It's just something that was not going on. But that's why fast forward almost like which is really scary to say, like 30 or 40 years, and now we're having the ability to watch this on our phones is amazing.
It's crazy, and the thing, going back to the book Fantastic Television, that goes back to the era of the beginning of the VHS era, and the era of the bootleg tapes. And you would go to a convention and they would be like bootlegs of like Land of the Giants or Lost in Space, all these different shows, and I'm sure One Step Beyond was part of it.
Right.
I mean, I know it ended up on the Sci-Fi Channel at some point, but Roy, there was a channel on Long Island called Channel 55 Riverhead, which was bought out by CBS and became like a satellite of CBS. But in the beginning, it was a UHF independent channel. And when they first got on the air, they didn't have a lot of sponsors. So they would show episodes of all this great stuff uncut, like Land of the Giants or Time Tunnel, or just things that didn't get repeated a lot. Like Lost in Space would get repeated a lot, but you didn't see Land of the Giants, you didn't see Time Tunnel that much as the other shows. And I believe they were running One Step Beyond as well. It might have been at some ridiculous time, like 1 a.m. or 4 a.m. or something like that. But I do remember running VHS tapes. I probably still own the tapes somewhere. I probably didn't throw out all my VHS when I moved. And that's where I was seeing these early episodes. But now, I mean, we can stream it. It's on DVD. I'm sure it's on DVD. Or you can watch it on YouTube. Unfortunately, no one's ever cleaned it up. So it looks like, your middle school science, health lesson with the school projector, so they're really poor quality in terms of preservation.
No, that's so true. I actually have not come across a really clean copy of it. I mean, if you're watching it on YouTube and if you're watching it on your phone or something that's a lot smaller, I mean, you can view it and it's a lot clearer. But once you have it on the big screen, I mean, the screen dexterity it's pretty bad. I mean, like you said, nobody has cleaned them up. And it's a shame too, because some of the stories, I mean, they're entertaining. I mean, it's a part of it's the golden age of television, if you think about it. I mean, in that time period, and which is, part of the reason why I wanted to include it and, talk about it. But
so some of the lightweight episodes we talked about was the first episode where a couple on their honeymoon, the bride gets possessed by the ghost of a dead woman and totally messes up, the honeymoon first night. And then also, what was the other one you mentioned? The one with Warren Beatty?
The Visitor. And it's funny because I was telling you about the fantastic television book that I had. In fact, if any of our viewers remember this book from back in the day, I mean, this was a really, interesting source material, and I definitely enjoyed it, like I was saying. But they had an episode guide in here that listed the One Step Beyond. And I believe it or not, do you know who that actress is screaming there in that picture? Any idea?
No.
Cloris Leachman.
Oh, right. Yes.
And then this is the one with the Visitor, and that's Joan Fontaine with Warren Beatty. And then Harry Towns on the other side. It's interesting, though, because a lot of the actors from the show, a lot of them went on to do a lot of episodic TV. Star Trek, being a part of it. I mean, I was going through the list of names. I mean, in the pilot episode, you had Skip Homier, who did 2 classic Star Trek episodes. He was in Patterns of Force, which you and I were talking about earlier. And then also my favorite, which I think out of all the episodes that I really dislike on a level of Star Trek, is The Way to Eden. I just can't get into that episode. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the guest stars were definitely very, good, and you had a lot of talent as far as that episode is concerned. But it's just not one of my favorites. I just, and it seems like
there she is. Yeah.
All of the shows in the 60s seem to do the hippie movement too. If you think about it.
It's funny, Roy. I'm reading the comments as we're scrolling along here, and we're getting a lot of comments. From our friends and stuff. Martin is here, and Charlene is here.
Hey, Martin. Hey, Charlene.
Here. But the funny comment is Isabel Hoy is saying that her book fell apart. How's your book holding up, Roy?
Well,
has your book taken one step beyond?
Hey, Isabel, I gotta be honest with you. That book I actually got. I reordered it. My original copy that I got 40 years ago, it actually did fall apart and went one step beyond out the door because of me reading it all the time. So that book I actually got as a bit of source material because my original one I couldn't find. And interesting enough, the last few years up in Ticonderoga, at Trek-Conderoga, I did remembering science fiction television shows of the 60s and 70s. I was very fortunate to be able to do that. And thanks to James Cawley with, and crew, up there. And it was basically a classroom environment talking about these shows. And that was kind of what gave me the idea of doing this, especially now, is it's something that kind of forget about, what we're dealing with and everything. So in fact, Captain Phil, you were in my audience for that.
I was spellbound. Actually, in Ticonderoga, we're going off script here a little bit, but Ticonderoga, that school up there, is like the school from the Jimmy Stewart movie, the Christmas movie, whatever the hell it was called.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful Life. Hey, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to get old, isn't it? So I'm sitting there in that school, and I'm saying to myself, I'm in It's a Wonderful Life, and Roy is my teacher, and I just had to get away from you after that thing and just say, my term paper is going to be a week late, Mr. Roy, Mr. Bjellquist. It was just the greatest thing, to be in that place. And, hopefully, going back to COVID-19 for a second, I can't wait for this to go away for us all together up there again,
Yeah, I hear you. This is just, put a hold on so many different things, but we'll come back to that. But yeah. But anyway, with that, going back to
do you want to talk about the greatest episode of One Step Beyond, or we want to talk a little bit more about these other episodes?
No, we can go into that, and I think you and I were really in agreement with it, and I was kind of making sure that you were going to watch it, and I'm glad you enjoyed it as much as I did.
That's right, boys and girls. It was the episode starring the captain himself, the other captain, not Captain Phil, Captain Kirk, an early episode with William Shatner, and it was just absolutely brilliant. Roy, why don't you lay it out for us?
No, it was a fantastic episode. It was called The Promise, and it involves him as a he's actually playing a German, and he's actually captured. And what he does is he's trying to repent from, because he was a German officer, and bombing and doing the terrible things that were happening during that time period. And what he's doing is he's repenting by defusing bombs. And what he does is he goes through the story of doing that, and then he meets a woman that he saves while defusing a bomb, and falls in love. And then she gets pregnant, and she's going to have a child. And during that time, she's basically telling him, please don't do this anymore because it's so dangerous. So he promises her that he will not do that. And prior to that happening, he tells her that, when the child is born, it's very important that he breathes words into the baby. It's a tradition that they have, and and I can't even recite the words, but it was very poetic, very beautiful, these words. And it was basically just to bring life. And what happens is, while his wife is working at a store or shopping, he gets a call that he's being asked to help to defuse a bomb that seems very tricky. So he is hesitant about doing this because, he had promised that he wasn't going to do it. But then he goes to check it out, and he's operating remotely while this expert goes in to defuse this bomb. But what happens is this expert gets hurt during this process, and he's unable to use his hands. So he says, William Shatner's character says that he'll go in and to work on it. So he goes in to work on it, and he's in the process of defusing it, and he's speaking to the operator, who's his friend, and explaining, everything about, his life and everything. And then at the split second, he goes, "Oh my God." And then you hear this explosion, and then the scene cuts, and it's in the store that his wife is in, and there's like a piece of china that just literally falls off the table, and it falls and cracks. And then what happens is the next scene cuts to
the cup of tea that he had been drinking.
Exactly, the cup of tea that he was drinking. And then the next scene cuts to the hospital, where she's gone into labor, she's given birth, but she doesn't want to see the baby because she feels that he's not there to share that with her, and she's very upset about it. And the doctor is trying to really convince her that you need to do this, you need to accept the baby, you need to to try to move on. And what happens then is an orderly comes running in and says that, "Can you please tell this man that he can't see her baby?" And then he's like, "What are you talking about?" And he said he picked it up saying that it was his child, and started saying speaking words. And then the wife looks up and says, "Well, what was he saying? Were they like peaceful words?" And then she's like, "Yes." And she says, "But I couldn't recite them." And then she does. And then when she hears what was being said, she says, "Yes, that's exactly what he was saying." And then she brings the baby in, and then now she's willing to accept the baby. And the whole thing was that he had come back to breathe life into their newborn child. It was just a very well written, very emotional type episode, and it was just very well done. And the acting was superb. And like Captain Phil was just saying, William Shatner was just spot on with his performance. It was excellent.
There's a lot crammed into it. And first of all, Shatner is at the top of his game. It's the young Shatner. He has his hair. He's not doing Captain Kirk. He's in this, and you have to say to yourself, William Shatner is a Canadian, but he's also Jewish.
Yeah.
And here he is playing a Nazi, which he also did in Star Trek, we discussed. But I feel like this one here, he was on a quest to make amends.
Yes.
Make amends for the things he did wrong, and that was by itself was very powerful. The entire thing about defusing these bombs, that was a real thing in England for years. And I mean, there still is issues with like minefields around the world where, mines and things that have been planted for years can still kill people 20, 30, 40 years later, which is a terrifying reality that we live with. So he's running around London helping them defuse these because he was in this. He was in the Luftwaffe. He was, dropping these bombs, and here he is diffusing them. It's kind of great. I mean, there's I'm going off tangent here. There's a James Morrow book called Only Begotten Daughter, and it's about it's satire, but it's about the second coming of God, and this guy, this man in New Jersey gives birth to the daughter of God instead of the son of God.
Oh, jeez.
And at one point in the book, the daughter of God goes to hell, and she finds Jesus down there. And this is like basically what Shatner was doing in London. He's like, he's there doing this sort of thing. James Morrow, Only Begotten Daughter, check it out. It's heavy duty. But you're watching this, and I'm thinking to myself, this is also the miniseries from England, Danger UXB, Danger Unexploded Bomb, which is a great series, which you should look up. And it also reminded me of the Oscar-winning movie The Hurt Locker. So there's like a lot of things going on here. And Shatner, say what you will about Shatner, Shatner was spot on.
He really was.
And I guarantee you, when they picked him for these later roles, they used that as his resume, because it's a great performance. It stands neck and neck. I think it's better than. I don't think it's better than Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, but I think it's better than the diner episode.
Oh, Nick of Time and
with the in the diner.
Interesting enough, though, too, because Nick of Time was, I believe, that was shot in 1960, and I think this episode of One Step Beyond that he did was in 1960, 61. So they were both shot around the same time, but. That's one thing I really enjoy is watching. I love watching actors that I love from our, from these famous television shows, especially the sci-fi stuff that, we grew up with, and, I love watching them in those performances, but I even love more too, seeing them do things that, they did prior to that. I remember, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but when I went to a Star Trek convention years ago, it was in fact with Vince, if you're out there, Vinny Fodi. We were up in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and Denise Crosby was supposed to be there for the Next Generation, but what happened was she couldn't make it, and they got John Delancey to show up, and everybody is asking him Q questions. Why does Q do this or that? All the standard stuff that you kind of like. You're in the audience and shriek because you're thinking, oh, it is a TV show. You know what I mean? But I said to him, how did you get involved in acting? And he just, he went on and discussed it for a good 6 or 7 minutes, which just felt like, a long period of time, as opposed to answering, a question that's like really quick. But he took, exception to that. And to me, it's really great to see, these actors work, their pieces of work, because, it's true acting, the different characters they can play. And, going back to, about William Shatner in this role, his earlier works, he's definitely gone in a different direction over the years because, he recreated himself and everything. But he was and still is a very talented actor.
And Roy, you have to look at it in terms of, he did that one episode. That was the one thing he did. He didn't, he focused on that one story, that one character. When he moved on and he was in Star Trek or T.J. Hooker or Boston Legal, not so much Boston Legal, but Star Trek mainly, he had to carry that show. That was his show.
Yeah.
He had to, he was in charge. If Shatner, Captain Kirk, failed, to convince you, the show would be canceled. He was the star. In this thing, he could concentrate on that one performance. But I think the burden in Trek, and I think that maybe a lot of people don't give him a break. And I always listen to what David Gerald says about William Shatner, and Gerald cuts him a lot of slack with this stuff. He says, "Look, if it wasn't for him, there would be no Star Trek."
Yeah, exactly.
And he has a lot to say about that, because the show took a long time to take off, and it took a while for Nimoy to become Nimoy, Spock to become Spock.
Sure, absolutely.
And of course, once the Holy Trilogy, was formed, of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, of course, then it was an ongoing concern. But in the very beginning, it had to be him, and they gave him a hell of a lot of work to do in the beginning. Wasn't Enemy within like the third or fourth or fifth show they shot?
It was. And we're going from one step beyond to Star Trek, but you're absolutely right, because if you have the Cage, you have Where No Man Has Gone Before, the first and second pilot, you've got the Corbomite maneuver, and then you've got Mudd's women, and then the enemy within was episode 5. But in essence, it was really like, episode number 4, if you're counting the second pilot. So it's true. But
and imagine how much work that was for him to play 2 different characters and stuff like that. And meanwhile, the show is still young. The characters are not formed. I mean, we talk about Space 1999 a lot, and we say in Space 1999, the first 4 episodes produced are like a proto-Space 1999. They're like the whole thing is still coming together as an ongoing concern, and the characters are learning themselves. But with an anthology series like for One Step Beyond, you don't
have that.
You go in, you do it, and you're out.
Exactly. It's a one-shot deal. Right. It's a one-shot deal. It is what it is. And I mean, there are the pluses and the minuses for it, but with that specific show, it definitely had its, there's a formula with any type of show. And I believe, with this, it was a half an hour show too. So you've only got literally 22, 23 minutes because you got to take out for the commercial time to, set it up and then have it, progress to that high point where, it's the climax. And then it's almost like the resolution, and then boom, it's done and it's over. And
Roy, the filming or the directing in this Shatner episode, I think stands heads above the other episodes of One Step Beyond that I've seen, because the eyes of the nurse and then the mother at the end of the episode, the way they zoomed in on them,
you felt it
with them working on the bomb, the unexploded bomb. Isabel Hoy chimed in that they are still finding unexploded bombs in London to this day, 60, 70 years later, which is terrifying.
It is, very.
So, you can go even further afield, and then you can steer me back. I mean, that's isn't that what the movie 5 Million Years to Earth was based on? They think they found a bomb when they were digging for the London subway, and it turns out to be a Martian spaceship. But anyway, I apologize.
It's all good. I mean, Phil, we're having fun. It's the important thing, and it's just that people are still like saying hi, and hey, Martin. Martin just commented too. He said, One Step Beyond, you can have it on the background and still do other things and not miss anything. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely right.
Yeah,
Martin's absolutely right. That's exactly what I was trying to do when I was upstairs. I was watching these things, and I'm like, yeah. You're absolutely right.
But it was good stuff. Now, in the other episode that we both watched, we were talking about, and it's funny too, on the internet, it was actually rated as one of the favorite episodes. It was called The Secret Mushroom, and they kind of went around. Yeah, I know. I know. I'm opening a can of doors with a title like that. But anyway, that story dealt with, it was more of a documentary. In fact, when John Newland comes on, he's saying, there's no actors with this. This is more like a research, and, we're looking into, espers, with taking mushrooms. And then they actually go to a place in Mexico where these, specialized mushrooms exist and everything. And, they're doing all these tests, and they have, reputable professors of science. I think there was one from Stanford. There was 2 other people from other universities. But you can clearly see that, when they're on camera, they are definitely uncomfortable. They are not, feeling very good about talking. One of my things sometimes is when I get in front of the camera, I tend to talk a little bit faster. This one professor was talking very slowly as he was, and to be fair, he wasn't. I mean, his expertise, is science. So what, it kind of by him talking like that actually added some credibility to the episode, because it almost proved that these people were not actors. They were doing the research, and they were going through the process. But anyway, it was an interesting turn, because it was kind of like removing itself from the formula, and what they were just basically trying to do was prove that the mushrooms were causing or giving enhanced powers of ESP. But anyway.
If any episode deserves to be played via Mystery Science Theater, it's that episode. And I didn't even get a chance to finish it because we were setting up how to do the Facebook Live thing. And everyone out there in Facebook land should thank Roy profusely that we never got the camera working on my end, so you don't see my terrifying face over this feed, which would cause all of you to take one step beyond. But now that we're all doing Zoom meetings and all these different things, I see my face in the box on the right hand side of my camera. I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to do something here. I have to turn my camera off. But this particular episode is just so, I don't know. I mean, at one point I feel like Timothy Leary, must have watched this at some point. And Roy, who watched the end of it, spoiler alert, everybody, Roy says John Newman actually takes the mushroom at the end of the episode. So actually, John Newman is like dropping mushrooms, in 1961 on TV. Nothing says 60s than dropping mushrooms, man. And I'm like, holy guacamole, and it's just hysterical. I don't think you can legally do that anymore. I think, so, it turns out, I mean, I have to watch the end of it. It's still sitting open on my computer. But it could have become an ABC after school special. The dangers of flying to Mexico to get mushrooms to have an extrasensory perception experience. It's just nuts.
With all that, Phil, I won't give anything else away after all those comments.
But I mean, but Roy, you think about it. I mean, this is kind of the premise of the movie Altered States.
That's right, absolutely, and that was it. Was correct me if I'm wrong. Was in Altered States Michael Cronenberg, or am I wrong on that?
I'm not sure because the synapses are starting to wear out up here. The air is thinner up here by Albany, so I'm not getting all the oxygen I need. But William Hurt was the lead.
Yes, he was.
Blair Brown.
Blair Brown. Yes. Yep. That movie.
Not Murphy Brown. What was Blair Brown's show? I forgot.
Wasn't she The Exorcist?
No.
Who am I thinking of? No. Wait a minute. I'm thinking of what's her name? That's not Blair Brown. Wait a minute.
Oh my goodness, Diane. Wait, I have to do this. Diane is like talking about Paul from Space 1999's mushrooms.
Diane, you're absolutely right about that.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
We found mankind's future.
I think there needs to be a study done of the effect of mushrooms on science fiction television and movies. There are several episodes. There's an Alfred Hitchcock with alien mushrooms, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We were talking about a Dick Van Dyke episode that you don't remember what I do, that had all these walnuts everywhere.
Oh God!
And I'm not making that up. That's the truth.
I remember you were talking about that. That was hysterical.
But yeah,
it would actually that would have been funnier too, Phil.
Show.
That would have been funnier too if the Walnut episode actually would have been the one with Barbara Bain in it. But that was his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend. You remember that?
Yeah.
But anyway, it was. It's funny though, because that mushroom episode would have been 61, and Altered States was 83. If I remember without looking into IMDb. So you're talking like 22 years later. But again, there's how the influence takes place though. With a lot of these things that were watched. And it possibly experienced, it carried over. But we'll digress from the mushrooms.
Yeah. Somebody is posting, Catherine is posting that the episode with Danny
Thomas.
Can that be that Walnut episode on Dick Van Dyke or I don't know. Where there's a little bit of a delay between what Roy and I are saying and what we're seeing.
Right. And I think Mike Rizzo just kind of 1980. You know what, Mike? I'm probably slipping. I used to be really good on the dates, and it probably Altered States was probably 1980. So my apologies on that one. I probably messed that up. God, that's a 40-year-old movie already? Jeez. That's crazy.
We're all old.
My God.
We're all old.
I guess so. Where did the time go?
I think one of the great weaknesses of One Step Beyond, besides the fact that it hasn't been restored, is that it was the same host all the time, and Tom Newland just seemed to be too competent, too good at it, and I always felt that I was with the Twilight Zone. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. With this, I felt I was watching Arsenic and Old Lace. I was watching something on a stage or something. You know, I was the vibe I always got from that.
Yeah. But you know what, though? I still feel that these episodes, I mean, and I agree. I mean, they're definitely dated, but they definitely have that, depending upon the story, it's kind of like, ooh, you know what? It's like, could this have happened? Or maybe this happened. I mean, obviously we're watching these specific stories and, you know, more than likely they did not. But yeah, exactly.
You know, it just reminded me of this the whole thing with the mushrooms too. They're running around with the mushrooms. This Side of Paradise.
Yes.
With the magic flowers.
True.
You know, for Star Trek.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a similar tie-in. I mean, it's
a lot of drug influence on you know, fantastic television. You know, and well, I mean, even Captain America. You know, going to superheroes. Captain America became Captain America because of drugs.
Right.
He had the super soldier serum that he took, and that they never produced ever again, ever. After that one time.
It's crazy. You know what? You know what other thing that came up in the research with One Step Beyond is that 13 of the episodes were shot in England in the third season. So there was kind of the American, and in fact, what I was reading, it was the first time there was like a collaboration between the American studio and the UK as far as, you know, working together in that capacity. So that was kind of cool. And then you also had some English actors, and Christopher Lee was actually one of them that was in that one of those episodes. So a lot of talent that appeared in the show. A lot of rising talent. I mean, in retrospect, I bet you Warren Beatty, I mean, you know, of all the movies he did and everything, if somebody would have said to him, if, you know, a few years back, you know, weren't you in One Step Beyond, he probably would have been like, really?
It's funny how today television has moved away from the anthology format, and now it's all about plot arcs, you know, and ongoing arcs and big long story arcs, and all these little nuances get played out over the course of a season or 2 seasons or 3 seasons or whatever. And, you know, but back then you had to tie everything up in a bow in 20 minutes.
Right, exactly. It's just, television is totally different, and everything's just taken a different form now. I mean, even with shows today, I mean, you're lucky if you have any, you know, with credits. I mean, if a television show has an opening theme or credits, I mean, well, they have the credits, but an opening theme or something that, you know, is associated with it, it's kind of surprising because you really don't see it. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Murphy Brown. I mean, I think they just had the opening, you know, the credits going through while they were actually talking everything. There was no, you know, theme song or anything like that. But I guess you save airtime with that too, you know. But to me, there's a special nostalgia about the 1960s and the 70s as well. But it's funny when you watch these shows from those different decades. Each of those shows has its own tone to it. It's very individual in that sense, especially for that era.
Agreed. And Michael Rizzo is correcting me and says Black Mirror, and he's absolutely right. When I said about there hasn't been any good anthology shows, there hasn't been any good anthology shows that I've gotten around to watching yet. Because everything revolves around me. Right?
Sure. You know, interesting enough about Black Mirror, there's an actor that's in it. His name is Jimmy Simpson, and he's actually a local talent. And he, you know, the theater group that I'm with is Country Gate Players, and you know, they've been, you know, having the theater for over 45 years. And Jimmy actually was an actor that performed in that theater group and was part of the theater group. And now he's, you know, in LA, and, you know, he's moved, you know, as out there, and he's been very successful, and he's a really excellent character actor. And he's done, I mean, if you saw him, I mean, he was in the last season of Westworld. He's done 24, and I mean, the list goes on, but it's really cool how actors can start out in, you know, community theater and, you know, productions, and then, you know, venture on. But he was actually in the episode of Black Mirror, like, you know, Mike's talking about the series, and it was the one that was kind of like Star Trek, which was kind of cool. So yeah, if you have a chance, Phil, definitely check it out. We'll talk more about that later another time.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're getting a little long, Roy. You want to promote upcoming episodes of the Roy Bjellquist interview series?
Yeah, we're going to be on again, it'll be on Sunday night. I'm very happy to have, it'll be at 7 p.m. And my co-host on Sunday for episode number 2 will be Bill Scarrato. And Bill is the owner of the Country Gate Theater Playhouse. He was the founding member, him and his wife, Carolyn. And I'm very excited about having him on. And we're going to be talking about the Twilight Zone and, covering, this is almost like an anthology weekend as we're, talking about another anthology series. So I thought it was a good tie-in to do that with One Step Beyond. So, and like One Step Beyond, Twilight Zone premiered in 1959. So we're starting to get closer and closer to 1960. But I felt that these two shows really deserved the attention because they both went into the 60s, whereas the One Step Beyond went into 61. Twilight Zone went to 1964, lasting for 5 seasons. So that'll be the next show we'll be covering.
And I think One Step Beyond kind of feels formulaic and like falls into like a formula sort of setup. Twilight Zone, there's a set formula as Twilight Zone, but I feel like Twilight Zone also pushed the boundaries, and really pushed things further out there. Even though they were doing things on the cheap, they were reusing effects from the MGM film library, from Forbidden Planet and other things. But I think way more of a societal impact.
Yeah.
With the Twilight Zone.
Absolutely.
And like I said with Roy was saying before, people were writing into the show saying, "Oh, this really happened to me. This really happened to me." And I was telling Roy, "Yeah, how many cases of beer did they have while we were watching the show?" Because I just, even though I'm a science fiction fan and I'm a genre fan, I'm a great skeptic, and everyone who knows me personally, who aren't fans, assumes I'm like, I believe in UFOs and I believe in this and I believe in that. It's like, I don't believe in UFOs. Why would they bother to come here? Well, they want to steal our water. No, they could just go to the Oort belt or and grab a comet. Wait a minute.
Phil, you don't believe in UFOs? You don't believe in UFOs?
I believe in purple hair. That's the one I believe in.
With groovy science fiction music playing in the background, right?
Oh Lord! Hey, before it gets too long, I need to do this. Before it gets too long, this is my little One Step Beyond thing. So cover your ears, boys and girls. This might be loud. Roy, here it comes.
Okay.
I wanted John Lennon to be in that so badly.
He made the transition.
One step beyond.
One step beyond.
When we started talking about that, I couldn't remember that was Madness. So that's Madness. So everybody online now just fell out of their chair.
No boy. I wonder if we have any. Before we start to wrap things up, I just wonder if we have any. Sure. If anybody has any questions or any additional comments, I just want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in. It's really appreciated. If you do have any questions, before we wrap it up, just let us know, and we'd be happy to.
There is a question from Mary Beth. When you're coming back, it's going to be this coming Sunday, correct?
Yes, it's going. Thanks, Mary Beth, for asking for me to for us to be able to clarify it. Yes, that's going to be this Sunday, which is going to be April 5th, 7 p.m. and Eastern time. And as Mike pointed out to me too, yes, we are in daylight savings time right now, so just be aware of that, everybody. And I apologize for the time difference to all of my friends and family family of friends that are in Europe, and I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you, Isabel, especially because I know you are 5 hours ahead of us, I believe. So it's probably about 1 a.m. there. So, but it's very much appreciated.
That's when I'm usually awake. So Isabel,
but
works for me. I was telling Roy when we were setting this up, never call me until afternoon because the PM stands for Phil Merkel.
But
yeah, I was reading through. There's been a couple of posts about the episodes we were talking about. Indecent copies are available up on YouTube. You want to look that up. And Roy, if you just let me do a couple of plugs for WUSB.
Absolutely.
So next week on WUSB Stony Brook, 90.1 FM, you can stream it anywhere in the world, www.wusb.fm. I'm doing a fill-in for Jimmy Dexter's show from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's going to be a pre-recorded show because of the COVID-19 crisis and Stony Brook University being turned into a field hospital in some places on campus. So on that particular show, I'll be having brand new music from Glass Hammer and Hacken. So you want to check that out, especially at 6 a.m. But if you're, I'll just send you the MP3 because it's a pre-record. And then I will be live in studio, as far as I know, we haven't been locked out yet, on April 9th, in conversation with Steve Babb from the band Glass Hammer on their brand new album, The Dreaming City, which is launching in the midst of this COVID-19 virus. So it's a great time to launch an album and to get it out there. Glass Hammer isn't a band that tours very much. They're kind of like Alan Parsons' project. They kind of like different members assemble, but it's definitely worth checking out if you dig music and stuff like that. And we'll also be updating what's happening at Stony Brook University. They have set up, there is a COVID-19 testing center on campus, and across the highway is the Stony Brook University Hospital. So it's kind of like the epicenter. New York is the hot spot right now, and I'm actually waiting to hear if I end up not being allowed to go in. If I'm not allowed to go in, I am set up to go remote from where I live now, West Coxsackie, New York. Yes, I moved to West Coxsackie, New York, boys and girls. That's where I live now.
Well, the important thing is for you to.
My plug.
Thank you, for sharing that. And the important thing is just to stay safe too, Phil. And thank you for letting us know about all that. And I just want to thank you again for being my first co-host. I'd love to have you back on if we, continue to do this, because I think this is, getting back to, just being serious for a moment. It's just a really good diversion from everything that's been going on. And I know it's been rough, for everybody out there. And it's a crazy time. It's crazy that, we have to live like this. And, you see people, you have to go to, whether you go to the grocery store or not. I mean, you're there and you see people, in masks, and, you have to, protect yourself, and you have to stay away. And it almost feels rude that, if you're starting to get close to somebody, when you're walking, that you divert and go into a different direction. But this is just really serious. And it's important that we all take it seriously and just do what we need to do. And, the most important message is, if you don't have to be out, don't be, stay home, and let's just, get this curve down and just get past this. And then, hopefully we can get back to what is deemed normal, or what we were used to be, as being normal. But it's just a scary time, and I believe we will get through it. But we just all have to, unite together. We have to be unified, and, it's kind of a reset, I think, for mankind, when it's not just taking place here in the U.S. It's not just taking place in Italy. It's not taking place in the U.K. It's not taking place in Canada. It's not just taking place, in China. It is taking place basically around the world. And, it's a global, pandemic. And we just need to really take this seriously, and we just need to be united, and we need to all look out for each other. So with that said, I just want to say thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know your feedback. The plan is to put this onto YouTube. That way, if anybody wants to check it out and watch it, they can. I'm not Mr. Tech Savvy. Phil's been actually helping me out. I'm talking to Mike Rizzo. He's been helping me. And Bill Scarrato, and then also Mary Beth Rakowski. We're just trying to, get this, foundation done and be where it needs to be. So anyway, with that said, thank you again for tuning in. And any last words, Phil?
Thank you so much for having me, Roy. I'm such a narcissist. I'll come back anytime you want me to. I will throw it out there that Martin Bend is requesting Tales of the Unexpected, which is a series I didn't really get into that much, but maybe you can line somebody up who's a little bit more familiar with that. But Tales of the Unexpected, I think, is the Roald Dahl series, so that might be something for the future. Definitely, come back and look at this again. You're right, we need a distraction. And I tell you, Roy, this entire COVID-19 crisis has played havoc with my hobby of licking doorknobs in strange buildings. I'm not able to do that anymore. So I'm really put out, and I'm hoping we get back to normal at some point. If I miss it.
No.
It's been very, very much.
Thanks for keeping the humor going, Phil. We need that. You always make me laugh, and I really appreciate it. And
Everyone's disgusted right now. With that image in their mind.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your friendship. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody out there. Please stay safe. And, again, if you want to tune in, Sunday at 7 p.m. this Sunday, April 5th. And I have to sign off by saying, please live long and prosper and take care of yourselves. Thank you, everyone.
And take one step beyond.
And take one step beyond. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now I'm going to figure out how